The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
Welcome to episode 22 of the Florida Podcasting News Show on the Florida Podcast Network. Florida Podcasting News keeps you on the inside of Florida's podcasting industry.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing podcasting in the time of coronavirus and social distancing, and provide some insights on how we are responding and some advice on what steps you can take in terms of podcasting to keep moving forward. Then we will reflect way back to when life seemed a little bit more normal, like a week ago, and give you all a recap of our Podfest experience.
This episode is brought to you by Flintstone Media. Thanks for joining us.
This is Jemmy.
And this is Glenn. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Florida Podcasting News Show. Well, let's jump right into it and talk about how boring the world has been in the last week and how we really had to dig to find something to talk about today.
There's just nothing going on. I can't imagine what this episode is going to be about. But side note, we are recording this for the first time using Zencastr. So let us know how this sounds. If you like it, we're kind of testing it out as we move forward. But yeah, nothing to talk about. What are you going to talk about today?
Well, we are going to talk a little bit later in the show about Podfest, which was 10 to 12 days ago, and it seems like it was a year ago. I don't know about you, but it just seems it's such a distant memory to me now, partly because of what my week's been like. But I mean, it just is crazy.
I know. And it does seem like it was forever and a day ago. But I think we're all getting hit with this thing so fast. This kind of has come in on us like a tsunami tidal wave. And we're just all adjusting. But it is good to reflect on those days of normalcy. So we will definitely be doing that at the end of the show. But in this last week, like you mentioned, you've had a crazy week. You know, I've had a crazy week. Everyone's had a crazy week. And we've both been having conversations with people through this week who are sharing certain fears in terms of their podcasting. You know, everything's unknown right now. But we're trying to make it through and make some sense of it. And so those fears that people have been expressing to us, they kind of have fallen into four main questions. And so we're going to take those questions and kind of attack them in this episode. So the first question up to bat is regarding the impact on podcasting as a whole. And so the question kind of sounds a little bit like, after, you know, the initial dust settles and all this, and everyone's kind of getting used to now clamoring in their homes, getting their preparedness underway and all this stuff, and now watching the news and locking in, what will happen to podcasting numbers? Will we see a bump in podcasting numbers in these next weeks? And I'd say the answer is that we hope so. You know, only time will tell, but this really is a great opportunity for each of us to use our platforms and become a leader on the coronavirus in each of our individual spaces. So talk about the coronavirus on your show. Speak to your audience, be calming, be steady. Don't have your hair on fire, because that won't allow people to feel like everything's going to be calm, cool, and collected. You want to be a calm, steady voice. But people are going to be developing some fear, but also some cabin fever, and looking for things to do and ways to keep themselves occupied besides just television. And podcasting can be one of those ways. So keep the podcast content going. You know, stick to your normal schedule and format. Yeah.
So
no, you're not allowed to jump in. You're just the co-host.
People are also looking for voices that they like and voices that they respect. So what we found, and we'll talk a little bit more about the extensive things we've done in the last week at the Horse Radio Network, but they're looking for a friend. And people that listen to your show on a regular basis, maybe have listened for the last 6 weeks, or in my case, the last 12 years, they're looking for somebody to be a leader. They're looking for a friend, and they're looking for somebody to hang out with that they like. So that's why they're going to come to podcasts that have been around a while, and that they're comfortable with. People tend, when you're having a bad day, you go to your comfort food, right? You would go eat at the restaurant you're most comfortable with if you're having a bad week. It's the same way here. They're going to go back to podcasts that are their comfort place. So, new listeners, will be looking for new things. I think that'll be based on different criteria, but your current listeners are looking to you to be there for them. I'll give you an example. I listened to 2 podcasts that I'm very disappointed haven't approached the topic yet. One was I listened to a podcast, a Royal Caribbean podcast, and it's a cruise podcast about Royal Caribbean, about everything shutting down. He must record ahead, and it took him almost 8 days to put out a show about the cruise industry shutting down.
Oh, that's frustrating.
In my view, he failed at that. He should have put out a special episode within days to talk about what was happening, and maybe every couple days he's full time, so he could have done that. I'm calling him out here because I was disappointed. And I kept looking for him to talk about it. I have a cruise planned in June. I was looking at him to talk about it, right? And he didn't talk about it. So I was disappointed. There's another one out there, and it's about Disney. And they still have not, and it's one of the most popular podcasts about Disney, and they still have not talked about Disney closing down yet. So I don't know if they record ahead again or what. I was expecting a special episode because I want to hear from him about this topic. So in both of those cases, I was very disappointed that I didn't hear about those people that are my friends who don't know me. But they're, in my mind, the experts about this topic because they're who I listened to for the last several years. Don't be that disappointment to your listeners.
It's true. I mean, this is a very rare event, and I feel weird about framing it in terms of an opportunity, but it's a very rare opportunity because everybody is experiencing this together across the entire planet, regardless of gender, regardless of what you do for a living, everybody.
And I'm going to change your word opportunity into obligation. You have an obligation now to your listeners. It's not even an opportunity anymore. You have an obligation to be there for them. They were there for you, and now it's your turn to be there for them. In whatever context you choose to do that in your show, it's your obligation now to be there for them.
That's true. Absolutely. So I would recommend, as much as you can, because things are so in flux right now. So going into kind of a little bit of the psychology of things are so crazy right now that people need that steady hand. So much to your point, Glenn, they know you, they trust you. So be that person for them. So also translate that in a way to your release schedule, meaning keep it and keep steady with it. However, also, because things are moving so fast and changing on a daily basis, make sure that you are flexible. You are able to, as you're now experiencing your own cabin fever, right? You have an opportunity to be flexible in your schedule. So be flexible and rise to the occasion. And so as things are changing, put out quick bonus updates, special materials, anything else that you can inform your audience and keep them aware of what's going on. I'll give you another example. So I have a client named Andy Kushner. He has a show called The Wedding Biz. Well, people aren't allowed to gather in groups anymore. So how are weddings happening? How are events happening? All of his guests are the top minds in the events industry. And so it is impacting everybody. And he is a man who records ahead. So just like you were talking about, perhaps is the reason for the Disney podcast, they should take a clue from Andy. So what Andy's doing is he's still releasing his episodes as planned, but what he's doing is he's visiting this coronavirus topic and doing a quick recording, impromptu, sometimes with the guest, and attaching it to the beginning of the episode. So it is going to be touched upon in every episode, and yet he's still able to release his previously recorded episodes that he had already canned and planned. So, there are ways to respond and ways to rise up.
Or if they're not relevant right now, put them on hold to when they are relevant.
That's true.
My mind goes in this situation, and obviously I don't know what Andy's doing other than what you say, but I would put, if it's about regular, in this case, in a wedding case, nobody's thinking about what's going to happen after now. We're just trying to get through it. So his obligation, I think, to the wedding business in general, which is his clients, is to really cover that and maybe put those others on hold. Otherwise, you have to take a look at, in my case, we're still doing light, fluffy entertainment on our daily show in the morning to try and take people's mind off of it. And maybe he should do that for that reason, but he's in a little different situation because people are going, are we even going to have a wedding, at this point? So I could argue both sides in court. Yeah.
But he is definitely adjusting, but the point is that a lot of people still, his audience, and at where we are right now, this has been like a Mack truck for all of us. And so a lot of the audience, again, going to the psychology of things, there's a part of us that's still going to want some pieces of normalcy.
Yes.
And so it's about finding the balance. And so I think that's what he's offering. And by giving that content that was pre-recorded to his guests in addition to the coronavirus updates, still gives them that hope for what can happen in the future. But to your point, I actually just had a conversation with Dave Butler yesterday, the host of Florida Beer Podcast. And again, brewers are being hugely impacted right now. No one can go to a brewery and enjoy a beer with some friends. And so that industry is going to be hugely impacted. And, they're coming up with all kinds of creative ways to rise to the occasion. And restaurants are doing takeout. So are breweries. They're now doing takeout growlers of their beer and stuff like that. So we had this conversation of how do you attack this new phase? And so what we decided for him is to can all of his pre-recorded interviews. He had about 6 or 8 of them. So we are canning them because in that case, they completely are irrelevant for right now. However, I advise him, why don't you reach out to those people that you had recorded with who were excited about having an interview come out, and ask them to jump back on with you. Tell them, hey, we're going to can those interviews for now, release them when it's a little more appropriate. But why don't you jump on right now and record a few minutes with me about Corona? What are you doing to rise to the occasion, to change what you're doing and to adjust? How are you doing that? And so what I explained to him is that, the brewers in particular, and this is going to apply to a lot of different industries, and including podcasting, we rely on each other, we lean on each other, and that's what breweries do. And so usually they kind of have formed friendships where they might pop into each other's place and talk about it and strategize or come up with new ideas. Well, they can't do that right now. So for Dave, I told him to position his show as that communication and creative hub space. So now it's going to be conversations about how do they adjust in their industry in light of coronavirus. And that's exactly what they want to hear. And that's, as you put it, his obligation, right? Right now, this afternoon, we're going to be recording with the president of the Florida Brewers Guild with his ideas. And so it's exactly what you have to do. So I want to ask you, Glenn, to talk a little bit more about what you guys are doing on the HRN side and give us a real-time example of how you're adjusting to this coronavirus and making it an obligation, rising to the obligation for your listeners.
Well, I mean, we bill ourselves, the Horse Radio Network, as the voice of the horse world. And I thought early on that we really need to be that. And the other, there's one is to serve our listeners, and 2 is to remain relevant through all of this. We all want to have, I'm full time, we all want to have our businesses, our podcast there when all of this shakes out, right? Whenever that is. So, one, to remain relevant and to serve the listeners, both of those things. So I immediately started doing blog posts every morning on my personal page and on our business pages. And then I also started doing Facebook Lives every evening. So this is in addition to our regular boat of a lot of episodes every month that we do, or every week that we do on the network, including our Horses in the Morning show 5 days a week, which we're staying away from the corona to keep people that break. So I left that show alone. And those thousands of listeners can listen to that and get a break every morning. And I'm doing additional types of content. So that's how I took it. Instead of doing separate podcasts or different podcasts for it, or we're doing different types of content. So I'm doing the posts on Facebook every morning, which some of those have gotten hundreds and hundreds of shares. And it's been crazy, but they're how to help. And, they're helping horse people in this environment. Some of them are doom and gloom, where I'm saying, go out and get your food for your horses now because you might be 30 days where you can't. They're very informative. Some of them are very beat people over the head and deal with this now, and some are light and funny. So I've been kind of mixing that up every day. And then the Facebook Lives at night have become, the first one we did with Dr. Jimenez about what barns should do to protect their their people, their borders, their, if they have borders, what they should do, about implementing protocols in place for large barns with lots of people coming in and out. We did that. It's now had 14,000 views. So, and every night those videos are getting between 2 to 5,000 views, to the point where the United States Equestrian Federation, which is in charge of all horse sport in the United States, the CEO reached out and wants to come on our Facebook Live, which we're doing every night at 5 o'clock on a set schedule. He wants to come on Tuesday to talk to the horse world. They have never really even acknowledged we existed before. We could ask for an interview and they would come on, but they would send a lower, somebody in the marketing department, right?
Right.
So, I mean, we've never had to hire up from that organization, even acknowledge our shows. And now he's coming on with their director, with another director, to address the horse world. And they've given me a whole list of talking points they want to talk about. And they're going to share that out, by the way, to their hundreds of thousands of followers on all of their pages live as well. So,
wow.
And then the other thing we're doing right now is I reached out, because we need to do fun stuff, not just doom and gloom. I reached out to the number one musician in the horse world. She's been coming on our shows for 12 years. We play her music all the time. She's independent, so we're allowed. And everybody knows her in the horse world. And we worked it out that we're going to use StreamYard, and which I love, by the way. We're going to use StreamYard all week. It works perfectly. I can't say enough good things about StreamYard. So we are going to do a live Facebook concert with StreamYard on our pages, and we got two of the people with the biggest followings on Facebook, totaling over 1 million people, to also put it live on theirs. And we're hoping to have 5,000 live listeners for this concert on Wednesday night. And if that goes well, as long as this is Corona things going on and people are closed, we'll get more musicians and we'll do it once a week. And we're billing it as the Horse Radio Network Concert Series. So again, we're raising our visibility. Is this making us any money? No. It's costing me a ton of hours every day. I haven't slept much. I've been working overtime. But what it is bringing into the fold is a ton new people that now are aware of Horse Radio Network that never were before. And I think we'll see an increase in listeners. We'll see definitely an increase in awareness. This is a time to add listeners. It's not a time to maybe make extra money, although I had a new sponsor sign up yesterday. So they're not all of them are thinking about pulling back. And I just think it's a time to be a leader, and it's a time to show the industry that you're there and you're in the lead, right? You're there to lead everybody through this in a logical way, but also at some points, I've had to say, look, this is coming, and it's not pleasant, right? But I can't tell you how many people have said they stocked up on their hay, they stocked up on their food, and now they're ready, and look what's happening, right? Thank God they're ready. And that's what we've been doing. Sorry that was so long.
That's quite all right. But you brought up a great transition into the next topic point and the next question. So question number 2, how do we calm the fears of our sponsors and keep them from turning away? So my initial reaction to that is to remind them that other marketing touch points are disappearing right now. So they can't advertise at events and conferences and expos. They can't be vendors anywhere. They can't have branded T-shirts sitting at a local restaurant or bar to be picked up. They can't have, there's a lot of stuff that they can't do. Even radio spots are kind of, I'm imagining, might see a hit because there are fewer and fewer people.
Well, nobody's selling cars right now.
No one's selling cars. No one's driving.
That's who 90% of the radio spots are.
Right. No. But also no one's driving in a car to listen to the radio. Right. And nobody is really sitting in, your generic waiting room office with the radio playing anymore. So radio spots are going to kind of see a downcline.
You brought up a good point. I never thought about people aren't in a car to listen to the radio, and people don't tend to listen to the radio at home.
Exactly. So radio spots are going to start to go down. So as these other marketing touch points for brands start to disappear, guess what? Podcasting isn't going away. It's here to stay. And so we have an opportunity to now gobble up some of those touch points that they might have had marketing budgets sent elsewhere. So, righty. rather
I'm going
than
to be doing
panicking.
on that note, I'm going to be doing a full blitz out on Monday and Tuesday about how podcasting, through all of this is going to be the place to be. So I'm definitely going to be doing that.
There you go. So what I have seen, which has been making my skin crawl, are on Facebook, because we're all panicking, right? But on like Facebook groups and stuff, like the editors groups and stuff like that, people immediately talking about, do I lower my rates for this? Do I lower my rates for that? And I would say, rather than panicking and lowering your ad rates, having that knee jerk reaction, just take a deep breath. You don't want to lead to any kind of long-term devaluation of your ad spots, not unless we have to. But for right now, I would say instead just offer maybe some extras, like an extra spot, an interview for anybody who's nervous and is considering pulling out. Just offer them extras. I would suggest that first, rather than lowering ad rates or just throwing up your hands and giving up. How about you, Glenn? What are your thoughts?
Same thing. We started having our current sponsors. We're reaching out to them and asking them to come on our shows. We're asking them to come on with our current sponsors. One, it makes them feel like they're part of the plan, right? They're part of the
right.
They're part of the whole thing. So it ties them in a little bit more emotionally and mentally. So that when they go to cancel, some of their marketing, that they look and they haven't talked to this magazine for 10 years, but they've been doing ads in it. Maybe they'll drop them before they drop us.
There you go.
That's what we have to hope for. So, and what I'm having them come on and do is just tell the listeners, we're still here. This is what we're doing. This is where we're at. I'm trying to keep it as positive as we can. And some of them are coming up with creative things to do. Like our one retailer is going to start doing a horse show virtually, where you send in your videos and they'll have real judges and they're going to give away prizes.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, we had them on to talk about that.
What was that show from the 80s or 90s called? Oh, America's Funniest Home Videos. But
it's still around, by the way. It's still on. So that's what they're going to do. So that's clever. So we have them on. And you know what? They sent me an email after thanking me and thanking us for being the leaders in all of this. So there's a sponsor that's not going to drop us. But I love your idea. I had thought about doing an offer out for new sponsors. You changed my mind on this, actually. I had thought about doing that offer out. We'll give you 1 month free, and then, we obviously sign them to a 3 or 6 month contract. But I think what we're going to do instead, after you called me out on it, is we're just going to offer them additional spots. So now we will give you
your spot, add value.
Yeah, we'll add value to it rather than devaluing it. And that was because of you. Thank you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. See, at least I helped one person. Okay. All right. So now we're moving into from having your own podcast to having a podcast business. Okay. So how do you calm the fears of clients who might and keep them from turning away? So if you have a business that supports other podcasters, so editing, production, all of that kind of stuff, like I have Flintstone Media, and HRN really is a production house as well. And so how do you keep your clients from getting fearful and turning away and dropping their podcasting aspirations altogether? So the answer is a lot of what we've said already. Just be their leader now. They need that calm, steady person to help them understand that, while things are crazy, there are certain things that can be kept under control, and everything's going to be okay. So I've actually closed 2 deals because of the coronavirus, much as you were saying, Glenn, that you've gotten an extra sponsor because of this. This is an unfortunate turn of events, right? And a lot of people are freaking out. But what you can do as the leader of your business and trying to grow your business and trying to keep your clients steady is schedule calls with each one of those clients to discuss the issues now. And you might be thinking, well, if I call them now, if I email them, if I reach out, then it's just going to bring front of mind the fact that they have this bill for me every month, and they're going to decide, oh, I should drop this. No. Guess what? They're already thinking about it right now. People are already thinking about the financial impact of all of this is happening on them, and they're making decisions right now. So don't worry about reminding them. What they want to know is that you are steady. So take charge of the conversation, meet this head on. It's not going away anytime soon, but let your clients know that you have a plan. So remind them, as we kind of alluded to already in the conversation, that this is this is an opportunity to become even more of a leader to their listeners in their space. And they can really solidify that trust that they have with their audience. And then in turn, you are solidifying the trust that they have with you. So, advise them to take advantage of this time where people have no other obligations outside the house and are trying to figure out how to fill their time and are looking towards podcasts to gain information, to either or maybe even gain exposure for their brands if they're a sponsor, whatever it is. Remind them this is an opportunity for them to really take time to gear their show, to focus on their show, to improve their show, make it better than ever, and to come out on top as the place for whatever the kind of content it is that their show focuses on. So as much stuff is out of control right now, focusing on their podcast content is something that is within their control. So let them know that. And you as a business leader, as their producer, you need to initiate those conversations and give them a sense of control.
I got nothing to add to that. Well said.
Okay. Alrighty. And last but not least, the fourth thing that has seemed to come up again and again was that people themselves, podcasters, a lot of us are doing this as our side gig. So the question is, I've lost my main job and source of income. Is there a chance that at this time right now, I can grow my side hustle of podcasting into a full-time gig? And the answer is yes, but sort of. Okay. So, first, when it comes to your own show, being cooped up is the perfect opportunity. Just like I was saying, you need to tell it to your clients. For you, it is the perfect opportunity to plan for any kind of shift. And then it can include shifting yourself from having an outside job to creating your own business. And if you've already been podcasting, perhaps this is a way for you to grow some income for yourself on the side while we're all dealing with this. So it's still going to take a long time. That has always been the truth, no matter what the people say out there who promise you big moves in a very short amount of time. It's still going to take a long time. It still has a very long front tail. But again, it's all about finding those opportunities. So if there's a potential client of yours who's been on the fence about starting a podcast, think of how to convince them now that it's the right time and really close that sale. If there's a potential guest for your own show who's been too busy to participate because of everything that they've had going on in their own lives, well, that might have changed in the last week. So they
let me talk to that, because we do 20 guests a week, and Jennifer, it's all of a sudden gotten easier to book guests. So
there you go. And if there's a sponsor who hasn't yet bitten the bullet to sponsor your show, look into how their marketing efforts may have dried up. So if you know that they're a person who tends to do a lot of magazine ads or a lot of radio ads or a lot of event sponsorships, like speak to that pain point now that those things are starting to go away. So like I said, I've actually closed 2 deals because of coronavirus. It can be done. You just have to get extremely creative, and it's up to all of us right now to think outside the box. So if you have ideas that you're implementing in your own podcasting business, your podcast, your guests, your sponsors, however you're doing it, please email us your ideas so we can share them. We all rise together. This industry of podcasting is still fairly young, and it's going to survive this. And so the people who are going to come out on top, it's because we're willing to share ideas with one another. So please email me, JAIME at floridapodcastnetwork.com, to share your ideas, and we will share them on the next episode of this show. And I'm still continuing to offer my free consultations through all of this craziness. So you can reach out and have a one-on-one with me to help you tear out your hair and figure all this stuff out. You can just go to flintstonemedia.com/free consultations. And we will be sharing general links and resources about the coronavirus, because as much as you want to have these conversations, remember, your expertise is in your particular industry and space. So don't hesitate to have someone on who actually is a medical expert to address how that applies to your space. So, for example, maybe sanitization or something like that. But anyways, we will provide resources. we have.
I'll give you another example. Our good friend who does Caribbean Podcast Network, the Caribbean is being affected by this hugely because they live
Oh
off of
yeah,
cruise ships. I thought about
Karen
that the
Henry.
other day, Jemmy. We were on those islands, Nassau and all those other. That's their 99% of their industry is cruise ships. And
Yep,
what are those poor islands doing? They don't have a government that can afford to send them all checks.
exactly.
That's an opportunity for her right now to take advantage of that. And that's one example that I just thought of is there's so many opportunities there to be the leader. And
Exactly.
podcasting right now is the place where the leaders are going to come from.
There you go. I agree. 100%. Our voices shall not be silenced. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And at the other end of this quick break, we're going to talk to you about Podfest and how all of the industry leaders recently came together for that convention.
Flintstone Media has been the digital bedrock of several Florida brands and businesses. Serving as a highly resourceful podcast production house, work with a leader in Florida's podcasting industry and add a podcast to your brand's content offerings. From setup through recording and distribution, Jemmy will lend her experience producing over 500 episodes and make the process of creating your show simple and easy for you. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. That's flintstonemedia.com.
Well, as we are all practicing social distancing right now, I was very happy that at least we got to get together one last time before all that happened. And we got to go to Podfest Multimedia Expo. It was in Orlando. A lot of podcasters descended on Orlando. And the wonderful folks at Podfest thought ahead. And what did they have on hand for us to all place on our badges, Glenn?
They had little stickers that said, "Keep away from me. Don't touch me."
There were these little green dots. And you got there a couple of days and had most of them. You talk about hoarding supplies. You hoarded green dots.
Every time I went by the check-in counter, they kept putting more on me.
They were making smiley faces out of them on your badge. It was funny, but it was a little weird because we're walking through the halls and, we're such huggers in the Podfest. Well, maybe not Liz Covart, but we're all such huggers in the podcast community. To not go up and hug each other and stuff was a little strange, but we had our badge dots and also our badge flags.
I think we had to be the last conference in Orlando.
We had to be. I mean, as we were there, we kept hearing the news through the grapevine that this other conference in Orlando had just been canceled. This other thing. I mean, Orlando is a conference hub and they were being canceled left and right as we were there for Podfest. It was insanity. But what was really great about Podfest was they had all these sub conferences that happened ahead of time. A lot of fun. And I got to participate in the Podcast Editors Conference panel talking about additional revenue streams beyond editing. So that was a lot of fun. And then I got to pop in on Cinema Vaz, which was being put on by Neil Giarte, a good friend of both of ours. It was a great crowd. It was a lot about voiceover acting and that kind of things. And they spoke a lot to the Spanish community. It was funny. I walk in there just to say hi, and I'm standing in there and Neil's up at the front and he notices me and he says, "Hey, Jemmy," and I wave. And then Danny Pena, who's up sitting next to him at the front of the panel, he goes, "Hey, Jemmy," and I wave. And then Neil's like, "All right, now everybody turn around and wave." Say good morning, Jemmy. And the whole entire room, "Good morning, Jemmy." He's like, "See, she's famous." I'm like, "Oh, Neil, come on. What are you doing to me?" Such characters at Podfest. You had a good time?
Yes, I did. It was it was fun to see so many bright, shiny new podcasters there. This conference is about double last year, and a lot canceled. I mean, or a couple hundred that didn't come, but yeah, it was still huge. So I think he said that we had about 1,500 there. So that was nice to see so many new people. It was also nice to see the continued camaraderie as the conference got bigger. It still seemed like a family reunion. And people were taking our advice and they were going up and just saying hi to everybody. I think I probably said hi to everybody at the conference. And I was just glad to see that. I did a couple of sessions too. My highlight would have been the improv session that I did with, Robin Sales, and we did an improv session. The room was pretty full, and we were the loudest session of the whole conference, I believe. You were there. Was it fun?
It was a lot of fun, and you would definitely wear the loudest session. And you just reminded me that I got yelled at 2 or 3 times outside of sessions for being too loud while things are going on in the room. But not during the improv. I could be as loud as I wanted. So could everybody else. That was a lot. You guys did a great job. What was great about it was you really delivered on the promise. The promise that you had set up was teaching people that improv and the lessons of improv and the tactics of improv can really help you become a better podcaster, content creator, interviewer, all those things. And you delivered, not only showing improv techniques, but then translating that into how that applies to making yourself a better podcaster. It was a fantastic session, and they better make it longer next time.
Of all the sessions that I was ahead of, that's the one I got the most comments about from people.
Yeah.
They loved that. And they all said, we wish it had been longer because we just touched on the surface and everybody was having fun. And I do think that we put together a good way of transitioning it. Okay, this is the lesson from improv, and this is how it applies to you being a host or an interviewer. We're going to continue that one. I think we're going to do that one in more places. I think it was really worth doing. But yeah, that was my highlight, I think. No, that wasn't. In fact,
I'm going to tell you right now, you're doing for Palm Beach Podcasters Meetup. You are doing it. I'm locking you in. Whenever we have meetups again, you're doing it. So
whenever I'm allowed to travel again. So
you're allowed to. I just realized I'm not going to get to see you for a long time. Aw, I'm sad. Oh man, or sense of relief.
We've been in lockdown personally here for a week. I have 3 major risk factors. I have Lyme disease, chronic Lyme, which makes my immunity really bad. Every time I get sick much worse than everybody else.
Oh, yeah, you do.
And then I have asthma, which for this particular disease is not good. And then I'm almost 60. So with all of those, I get 3 strikes. So we've been in quarantine for about a week. We haven't gone anywhere or done anything. I've been very careful about food.
Lung.
Yeah, you have lung problems. Yeah, so I mean it's so. But I wanted to say that that wasn't my highlight. My highlight was you getting the big award for the whole conference and going up there in front of 15,000 people and crying your eyeballs out.
1,500.
1,500. Yeah, sorry.
Is 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's right. 1,500 people crying your eyeballs out, and you so deserved that award. It was the High Achiever Award. I thought it should have been we won't say it. But the High
I think you can
I thought it should have been the Overachiever Award, but he chose High Achiever.
No, that was the award that I got 4 years ago at Podfest. I got the In Your Face Award. Yeah.
You really did deserve that, and it was very heartfelt, and you could see it on Chris's face when he announced it. I knew nothing about it, by the way, and I know you probably think I did.
I did together before I did, as he was announcing it. I didn't think he was talking about me at first. You put it together.
Matter of fact, we were talking about leaving early because of your car situation, and thank God we didn't.
Yeah, my car broke down on the way up to Podfest, and my highlight, I have a few, but my highlight was definitely that I knew, even though my car broke down, that whether it was you, Glenn, who ended up being you, but whether it was you or one of the other wonderful folks at Podfest, we're such a family. I didn't freak out. I knew I was going to make it one way or another. I'd be taken care of. And lo and behold, my knight in shining armor ended up being you, and you came and you got me, and then you ended up being my unintentional chauffeur the whole rest of the Podfest. So thank you, Glenn. # best friends. And then my other highlight was definitely, I have 2 more highlights real quick. One, seeing Izzy. Oh my God. I love that little girl, and she's amazing. Izzy J of Recording Live Podcast. She's phenomenal. And she got, there was a woman there who was talking about podcasting with kids, and the kid that she had arranged to interview on stage couldn't make it. So impromptu, she asked Izzy about a half hour before her session, and Izzy was all game, and she went up there and she nailed it, and she was so good. And I'm just eternally proud of that girl. So shout out to Izzy J and her dad. They're just such a great family. And then the other highlight was that my whole team, not my whole team, a lot of my team got to come. As anybody who has been following my progression, especially over the last few months, I just recently hired a bunch of wonderful, wonderful new team members, and 4 of them, George, JDM, Daisy, and Dan, got to actually come to Podfest in great part due to the folks at Podfest. So thank you to them for that. But it was wonderful having my team there, seeing them meet each other, get along, taking them to lunch. That was just a lot of fun. And Podfest has been this place that has not only seen and chartered my progression in podcasting as far as a career, but also really moved it along and helped it and supported it. So shout out to Podfest. And the people behind Podfest are doing something amazing to help support all of you guys as we continue to figure all of this stuff out with coronavirus and our industry. So starting this coming week, they are going to be doing some Facebook Lives in the Podfest Facebook group. So make sure, if you're not already a part of the Podfest Facebook group, that you sign up and you go ahead and like the page, because they're going to be doing these amazing Facebook Lives from thought leaders in our industry, all in reaction to coronavirus. Some of it is going to be, informational and educational and thought-provoking, and some of it's just going to be plain old fun, right? We're just going to help each other stay positive and everything else. So go ahead and like the Podfest Facebook page now so you don't miss any of it. It starts this week. So through Podfest, through us, you're going to continue to have great content coming to you. And we're all retooling right now in response to coronavirus. So for example, if you're a craft beer enthusiast or a local brewer, Dave Butler from Florida Beer Podcast will be connecting Florida's different industry experts to share ideas on how to manage and make it through this crisis. On People of Florida, I'll be holding off on releasing those conversations I recorded ahead of COVID-19, and instead, I'll be bringing you conversations with our community leaders on how to best respond to and deal with this, including various locals who are just simply in the unknown grind of it, just like you guys are, just like we all are, just like we're all trying to figure this out. So we're going to figure this out together. And on Finding Florida, Glenn and I will be providing the sunnier side of things, laughing about our shut-ins and having to explore travel and tourism and Florida man shenanigans from our backyards. We're not allowed very far, so that's about it. So we're going to be making it through, guys. Lots more content coming to you from Florida Podcast Network.
Thank you, everybody. And remember to be the leaders in your space. This is your opportunity to stand up. It requires a lot of work, but if you're home, what else you got to do? But they will not go unnoticed in your particular niche and in your industry. But as always, you can find details and show notes about today's episode, including coronavirus, or as your son would say, stupid coronavirus, by going to Florida Podcasting News. By the way, could you please record him saying on your phone and send it to me, stupid coronavirus, because I'm going to play it on my morning show often. I need that. Okay,
I will, I promise.
All right. And have him be as dramatic. Well, he's always dramatic, so don't worry about it. Come together with us and other Florida Podcast Network hosts and superfans. We may not be able to hang out in real life right now, but there's always Facebook. And you can do that by joining the FPN Insiders on Facebook.
And if you have any podcasting news to submit to our shows or ideas on how you're making it through and growing your podcast in the midst of coronavirus, please email me, Jemmy, Jaime, at floridapodcastnetwork.com.
Many thanks to this week's sponsor, Flintstone Media. They're good company, I've heard. The lady who runs it, she's kind of obnoxious, but, everybody else that works there is good. Yeah. And her head doesn't fit through the door anymore now that she won a big award and stuff. And be sure to visit all the great shows in the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Until next time. When you're already hanging out in the inside of your house, thanks for also hanging out on the inside of Florida podcasting industry.
Stupid coronavirus.